Hello, this is the channel Easy Self-Host. In this video, we're going to run Ollama with Open WebUI, a combo that runs large language models on your private server and provides you with a chat experience similar to ChatGPT. We're also going to explore the possibility of integration with LLM in other self-hosted apps. Self-hosted language models have the benefit of privacy because our data will never leave our own computers, so we can be more comfortable sharing personal data with them. I'm going to run the latest Llama 3 AB model on my server with a Pentium CPU and 8 gigs of memory. This is a very modest setup for running LLM, but you will see how usable it is. Ollama is an open source framework for building and running language models, and it can run as a server for generating responses and chatting. OpenWebUI provides the graphic user interface to interact with the Ollama server and also manage the data like chat history. We're going to run this tool using Docker Compose. This is the Docker Compose file we're going to run. We start by defining the Docker network for the proxy server. This will allow our proxy server to connect to both services. Next, we're going to define two Docker volumes. The Ollama volume will store data like language models for the Ollama server. The OpenWebUI volume will store data like chat history for the OpenWebUI server. For the service section, the first service is the Ollama server. It uses the official Ollama image. We're attaching this service to the proxy network so it can be discovered by the proxy and the OpenWebUI server. Note that we're not using the default network here because both services will be exposed to the proxy net. There is no need for another interconnecting network. Also, we're exposing the Ollama server to the proxy to allow clients other than the OpenWebUI server, as you will see later. The Ollama server exposes the port 11434. For volumes, we're going to map the Ollama volume to the /root/.ollama path in the container. Moving on to the OpenWebUI service. It uses the official image hosted on GitHub. We are also attaching this service to the proxy network, and it exposes the port 8080. For volumes, we map the OpenWebUI volume to the /app/backend/data path in the container. For environment variables, we set the variable Ollama base URL to the Ollama service we just defined. With this environment set, the OpenWebUI will connect to our Ollama server at start. We also need to update our proxy configuration for these services. I'm using Caddy, so I'll add a proxy rule to proxy the hostname chat.home.easyselfhost.com to the OpenWebUI service at port 8080. If you plan to use other clients for the Ollama server, you can create a proxy rule for it too. I will map the ollama.home.easyselfhost.com to the Ollama service. To run these services, let's go to the server command line and navigate to the directory that has the Docker Compose file. Here, we can simply run docker compose up-d to start the services. To refresh the proxy config, I'll restart my Caddy server by restarting its Docker Compose. Now we can go to the OpenWebUI app in the browser. First, let's sign up for an account. When we are logged in, we can start a message and we will find that we don't have a language model yet. Let's go to the setting. Under Models, we can type in the language model we want to download. To find a model name, we can click this link. It will list all the models offered by Ollama. I will choose Llama 3, a language model open source by Meta. It will take a while to download, as language models often have gigabytes of data. After it finishes, we can exit the setting and choose the model at the top. Then we can send it a message again to test if it works. Well, let's try to send it a more complicated message to check the quality and the speed of its output. I'm showing a timer in the video to show you how long it actually takes, as I'm going to speed up the video. Large language models are good at multi-round conversation, so I'll also send a follow-up question. As you can see, it will take a while to generate responses on my low-power computer, but the quality of responses are very impressive. As a comparison, I also tried running the same model on my laptop with the 9th Gen i9 CPU, and it generates much faster. Running language models will benefit from faster CPU or GPU if you have one. On slower CPUs with chat applications, I recommend using simpler prompts and limiting the length of the output for better user experience. For Open WebUI, there are some other features to explore. For example, we can upload models that are not hosted on Ollama. We can also configure speech-to-text and text-to-speech to interact with language models using voice. It can also be hooked up with an image generation model to generate images. For self-hosted language models, I've been thinking about use cases other than chat. One of the use cases I found useful is generating summaries for documents or notes. Generating summaries can be done in the background, so the speed of running language models doesn't matter that much. To verify this idea, I tried to implement this feature in Memos, a self-hosted note app I love. I did a video about Memos before. In my modified version of Memos, there's a new setting for the large language model endpoint. Here we can configure the language model URL, which is the Ollama endpoint we just set up. And we can specify the model to use. In our case, we can use the Llama 3. We can also configure the template prompt to generate summaries for the memo content, but there is a default prompt. After this, in each memo, there is a new button that we can display the generated summary. If the summary hasn't been generated in the background, we can also click the Generate Now button. A more common scenario I imagine is that we have a long memo like a meeting note. When we just write it down, we probably don't need a summary since our memory is fresh. A day or two later, when we don't have a clear memory, it's nice to have a summary to help us quickly recall. And that duration is sufficient for a language model to generate summaries in the background. I hope self-hosted language models can be integrated in more projects. That's all I want to show you today. Please consider subscribing for content like this. You can find the configuration files in this video on GitHub and the link is in description below. Thank you for watching.